Hello, I'm Dennis, that's my crime, and that's also my punishment, and this is the speed painting and the making of the Little Nightmares painting that I recently released online. This is the first speed painting video that I've been able to put together in the new studio here in America. So yeah, at the time of recording, I'm just an inch away from being married. Just a couple more days to go, and then that green card is in the post. Yeah, it's not quite how it works. There's a little bit more to it, but yeah. Basically, yeah, I'm here living in America now. Got the new studio set up and everything. We've had a few issues over the past month with getting everything set up, but new monitor, new everything, brilliant software. At the moment, touch wood, everything is running nice and smoothly. So what you're looking at the moment is a speed run, or a speed painting I should say, recorded automatically in Procreate, the app that I use on the iPad. Originally I was going to use the iPad as the main tool for this painting, but as I was working on it I started to think, you know what, I really want to try and see what I can do with ArtRage and everything. So using Procreate, I took that sketch that I did. Procreate was basically used as a way of mapping out the design, something to figure out, you know, basic placement, you know, also the lighting and everything. And then what I ended up doing was I took the Procreate sketch and I opened it up in ArtRage. At the moment of where this was recorded and everything, you'll notice the screen resolution and all that is not amazing. That's because that particular screen we were using was an old Dell monitor and everything, and we were basically trying to make the most out of the limited amount of space there, so everything's kind of all bunched up. Another problem that we had with this drawing in ArtRage, at least with the early stage and everything here, was we basically made it way too big. This was created at print resolution, and you're talking 6,000 pixels wide, and that's the the shortest length, is 6,000 pixels. So it was, and at 300 dpi, it was pretty big, a little bit unwieldy to be honest. And one of the golden rules of working in illustration is start small, work big. So about an hour or so into this, I basically decided, screw the sketching and everything, shrunk everything down to a much more manageable size of just like 3,000 wide, and then we started work on adding detailing and everything. So Little Nightmares. Oh, Little Nightmares was a good game. I liked that game a lot. Well worth your time. We actually didn't play it ourselves, me and the future wife. We were basically watching a couple of Let's Plays on YouTube. The best one was Markiplier's. If you've not seen it, I'm going to link it in the description of the video. Excellent video. Well worth your time watching. The funniest part, I think, was the end credits. Well, first of all, I will not spoil anything about this game. I will not spoil story or anything, although I suppose some of the creatures and some of the characters and everything in this painting might be considered a spoiler if you wanted to go into it completely blind, but this is only stuff that you've seen in trailers and other clips on YouTube, so there's not much context is given. But yeah, it's a great game. Cannot recommend it enough. The ending is is its own thing. But the funniest part was of the Markiplier Let's Play was the end credits. The only drawback I can see with this game, and I'm pretty certain this is something that's going to be patched out, is aside from one or two issues where it's very easy to die to just walking off the edge of the platform. Dogs. It's very easy to die walking off the edge of something. But the biggest problem to me was the end credits. Because, first of all, they're unskippable. Second of all, they are slow. I mean, they move at a snail's pace, so I'd recommend at least 3 times faster, you know, in terms of the speed and all that, because it gets boring as hell to watch. The third issue, they're well over 20 minutes long. In the video that Markiplier recorded, he finished the game. I won't spoil the ending, it's awesome. But basically the poor man started to get confused by the length of the end credits, and then it got to the point where he looked like he was going to have a nervous breakdown. They were ridiculously long. Ridiculous. I honestly recommend you check out that series of videos that he did. I think it was only about 3 or 4 episodes in total. Funny as hell. But the game itself as well, I can't recommend that enough. It's a superb looking game, superb design and everything. The visuals were great, and basically just from the strength of that Let's Play, this painting came about. Now, to be fair, this is the first painting that we've finished off with the new full studio setup, new monitor, new hardware and everything. However, as you can see, as we said before, a good chunk of it was done on a different monitor, hence the screen ratio being a little bit wonky. Since I've moved to America, we've produced a couple of new pieces. However, one of the things that I wanted to try and do was record as much as I could, because it's been, as you can tell, a real long time since I've done a speed painting video, because I'm so out of practice I sound like complete crap. I know it, you know it. If you've stuck through 7 freaking minutes or so, then bless you. I really appreciate it. It's taken a while. And it's going to take a while to properly, get that level of energy back up and figure out what I'm doing properly. But yeah, even though we had one of the problems that we had basically with this computer was there was a heatsink issue, and while the monitor was not ideal for drawing and painting and everything, we made do, as you can see here, but the big issue was the heatsink. Now at the moment I've got one eye on this software at the moment that monitors the fans and everything, because whenever we were doing stuff involving like high-end video games like as I say Fallout, Inquisition, all that jazz, the computer would run for about 5 minutes and then it would completely shut itself down to protect itself from melting. As I've said in other stuff like on Facebook Live or the videos I've been posting on Twitter, that's not the fault of Tony, the lovely guy who made this computer for us. As it turns out, like UPS or somebody in transit basically knocks the machine about, and some of the internal stuff to do with the heatsink has basically got a bit wonky. We are in the process of fixing that, but for the moment the computer does what I need it to do. I mean, I don't need to be gaming and everything because, well, let's be honest, I'm not that good at gaming, and B, as you can tell by now, it takes me a while to get into the swing of things when it comes to video commentary. So Another thing that I really wanted to do, by the way, was streaming. However, unfortunately, it's very difficult to engage with people on such a small monitor. All of the screen was taken up with the artwork and everything. To be fair, this is about the amount of this is probably the right size for how I would have worked back home on my old monitor, which was an iMac, by the way. I'd have a window devoted to ArtRage where I do the painting, and then in the corner I'd have either YouTube or Twitter open up. I'd have like a chat window where I could actually see what people are saying when I'm streaming and actually engage with them. Because here's the thing, there is 0 point in streaming your artwork if you're not going to talk to people. It's just, it's masturbation. It's bullshit. There's no point to it. So while I was trying to get that situation resolved, that's why I recorded everything that I could. So I'm sitting on hours worth of footage for a couple of paintings, but most importantly, pretty much every single page of Heirs to the Throne Chapter 2. For those of you who don't know, that's the graphic novel I'm working on. We've got a load of footage of that I'm looking forward to cutting together and sticking up on our Patreon, the Lunar Blaze Patreon. That's going to hopefully be done soon, probably after we're married, because, you know, as I say, we've got a couple of things to do. You know, it's going to be an interesting few weeks for us. So we're really looking forward to getting that taken care of, all the paperwork signed. I know that doesn't sound very romantic and everything, but like both me and my partner, we kind of don't give a shit, to be honest. You know, it's one of them things where it's like we're doing it for us. We're more interested in us than doing something that's traditional. You know, like we do have plans for a big party and everything, but at this point we're just trying to sort the legal stuff out. Also, yes, dogs are dogs. Basically, we've got about 4 or 5 dogs. I've been here a month and I can't remember how many dogs we have. We have a lot. Let's put it that way, and they get a bit noisy. So I'm not going to apologise for that. So deal with it. So anyway, we're currently working on getting a bunch of videos cranked out in the very near future. This is the first one. This is the first time I've ever used Adobe Premiere, by the way. So it's been a bit of a learning curve trying to figure out the software, figuring out the editing, and of course, as I keep saying, getting back into character, well, not so much character, but getting comfortable talking about, you know, what we've been doing. You know, so this is like kind of half how-to, half video blog, you know. That's the basic gist with these videos, and I've missed doing them. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into the swing of things and you know, producing some entertaining and informative content for you lovely, lovely people out there. So, like with most paintings that I do in ArtRage, normally what I'd do is I'd use the chalk tool to mask out a basic shape and everything, and then I'd start using this paintbrush tool that you see here on the left. However, because I'd already done the basic layout and everything with Procreate, I don't like using the tracing mode in ArtRage, but considering I'm the person who I'm tracing off an image that I made, I think you know, I can be allowed a little bit of leniency there, just a little bit. Still don't like the idea of tracing. Tracing's fucking lazy unless you've made the reference material yourself. You know, if you've taken your own photographs, if you've made your own 3D models, if you've already composited something together in a different program and everything, then that's absolutely fine. you are absolutely entitled to use reference. It's just when you're using other people's stuff without permission, and you're just basically dragging and dropping shit, and you know, it's a little lazy. I should know, because some of my very first paintings on DeviantArt, yes, they're still up there because I believe in shaming myself. Some of my very first paintings were either tracing, or they were pretty much copies of somebody else's artwork, because I was still learning. You know, I was a kid. You're talking 17, 18 years ago now. But you know, it's still not something you should do. But yeah, it's like, if you look through some of my soup, you're gonna have to really go back to the very beginning of my gallery and everything, and you'll see one or two pieces that are just like, yeah, you've taken that off an anime. You've taken that from someone else's thing and all that. So tracing is bad. Using reference is good. Stealing is bad. There are distinctions. There are grey areas. But at the end of the day, it's up to, you know, it's up to you to exercise your brain and figure out what the difference is. I will say I have zero respect for anybody who thinks that you're not an artist if you don't do everything blind, if you don't do it all from scratch. If you think that you can create amazing artwork with completely blind, just open a page, open up an application, you know, or, you know, traditionally get your sketchbook, whatever. If you can just sit and draw in a blank room, you know, completely from memory, doing your own thing, then congratulations to you. I think you're a fucking alien, you know, if you can do that. No, and maybe there are some people who can do that. I'm not one of them. I'm really freaking not. But in my experience, most people who say stuff like that, they're not actually artists. They're just people who think that's how art should be done. They don't believe in using reference. They think that's cheating. Oh, look at the cheater. Oh, no, that bullshit. Well, here's the thing, guys. Everybody, every good artist that I'm aware of uses reference. It is part of the deal. You can't just pull shit out of your ass. You just can't, okay? A couple of years ago, there was a documentary done by this British artist, David Hockney, which really stuck with me. You know how, like, Renaissance paintings, you know, like the 1800s or whatever, these really elaborate, beautiful paintings, they're almost as good as photographs, you know, the light on the you know, the mirror, the glass and everything, you know, perfect reproductions of life studies and all that, you know, really good lifelike portraits. Yet those were flipping traced with a light box. He reverse engineered how they actually did it, and he figured this out because the further away from the center of the canvas, you know how you get to the very corners of these paintings, the painting will get more and more indistinct. Now, normally you'd only put the detail in the part of the painting that you want people to look at. Yeah, fair enough. However, the actual painting would start to warp. The physical shape of the scene would start to, you know, warp and blur and stretch out the further towards the edge you got. And he realized that they were basically, that's what happens when you use a light box and you're tracing from a light box. And that's what they did, you know. Another one was this is probably a reference a lot of you guys won't get, but there was a series of comics in the 60s called you know, Eagle Comics, and you know, Dan Dare, I know they did a CG animation of that a couple of years back, but in the original comics and everything, the artwork's great, by the way. I'm actually going to flash up a few pieces if I remember to edit that in. All the artwork, all the characters, they were actually based on the artist's friends and family. He took photographs of everyone in full costume and he worked from them. So, you know, reference is good. Reference is really useful. Reference is how you get things right. Because the fact of the matter is there's just no way. There's no way of producing you know, something from scratch. Now, you can come up with ideas from scratch. I mean, I came up with the idea for this painting off the top of my head. This composition popped into my head fully formed after watching the Let's Play and everything. In the original sketch you saw, I did actually have more. You know, I wanted a couple of pipes and rigging and like a noose and all that, but that wasn't really the essential part. The core layout basically appeared in my head perfectly, and I roughly mapped that in, but there's no way in hell I was going to be able to get the details right on the characters and everything. You know, it's just, you know, I mean, to be fair, I'm actually using something pre-existing. You know, that's a slightly different argument. But, you know, at the end of the day, I've said that 4 times. I'm just repeating myself now. It's just something that bugs me. I see so many people beating themselves up because they think, oh, real artists don't use reference, so I'm not a real artist because I'm taking pre-existing stuff and, you know, and I'm just, you know, copying it. Well, if you are taking pre-existing stuff and you're actually copying it, then there wouldn't really be any difference. You know, you'd just be like copy and pasting stuff. That's not what most people are doing. So, you know, I think that people, you know, artists need to stop beating themselves up over shit like that. But anyway, yeah, sorry, a bit of a rat hole there. It's, you know, something I've wanted to talk about or not, and I'll probably do it again at some point when I'm a little more articulate. For the moment, I'm just trying to figure out what to talk about with this painting. Now you see here, look at all those different references. Look at all those different paintings and photographs and screenshots for one character. You know? Now, even then, you know, I think I could have probably done it a bit better. And even, you know, because the majority of this is done in shadow. In the end result, you can't see 90% of this. But I wanted to be able to give a little hint of, you know, I wanted you to be able to, if you play the game and everything, you know who the characters are. You can tell exactly which of the two chefs it is, you know, this, you know, not just from the silhouette of it, but you know, because each of the wrinkles are slightly different. So, but as you can see here, I've got so many different pieces of reference, you know, from so many different angles. If I wanted, I could have just taken that one on the left that you see there, the close-up of the face, and I could have just copied that perfectly. And to be honest, I do use it quite a bit for placement of the folds and everything. I could have literally copied where the light hits it and all that, which would have been stupid because the light is hitting him on the right and in the reference it's hitting him on the left. But here's the thing, it's always helpful to have as many different examples of something to work from as possible, especially if you're doing something that's pre-existing in the world. You know, whether it's fan art or whether you're illustrating something that is recognizable, that people will recognize. So it's always nice to have a variety of different things, because here's the thing with fan art, you know, for the most part, the really good artists, you know, they're able to make something that you've never seen before but fits perfectly into the world, which is what I strive to do. I'm not saying I am one of the really good artists, I'm just saying that's what I aim for. Now, I don't like saying the bad fan artists and everything, but it is really noticeable when you're doing a piece of fan art and you've basically taken one of the promotional pieces and you've copied it verbatim. Like I say, this, you know, this other piece of reference that I've got here in the top left, you know, it's this, people have basically, they've copied this exact drawing, the same pose, the same lighting, you know, the same folds and everything. It's just like, when you're doing something like that, I'm not going to admonish you if you're young and you're starting out, because that's, like I was saying earlier in the video, that's literally what I used to do. If you're learning, that's absolutely great, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to, you know, sort of do this kind of thing full time as your own gig, you know, if you really want to progress in creating art, you know, really creating illustrations that are unique and all that, you have to use what's existing as flavor. You have to catch, it's the difference between catching the spirit of something and you just imitating it, you know. It's very easy to just trace and to copy and to imitate. It takes a bit more work to think about how a piece made you feel, how a game or a TV show makes you feel, and translate that into art. Because art, like illustration, because you know, kind of, you know, very close cousins, but there are subtle differences. With an illustration, you're communicating an idea, you know, you're not copying something, you're not imitating, you're communicating. So that's the, you know, that's the general distinction that I'd go with there. So try and figure out the, you know, break it down into its elemental parts. How did this game or this TV show, how did this make you feel? If there's a particular scene or a particular character that you want to illustrate, instead of, you know, taking, you know, screenshots of that exact moment and then copying it verbatim, try and figure out, you know, different angles, different you know, ways of lighting it, giving it a bit more energy, a bit more life. Try and figure out what the core of that scene is, what the emotional core is. You know, how did it make you feel? How are you going to get across that feeling in a painting? You know, all of this sounds really pretentious and bullshit, by the way, but this is the sort of stuff that, you know, goes through my head while I'm working and everything. So I never said I wasn't pretentious, you know, by the way. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on, you know, tracing, you know, for the, because it's a crutch at the end of the day. You are entitled to do whatever you want with your time. If you want to if you basically, you're a fan of something and you want to show how much of a fan you are, how much you care about something, what you feel about something, then what I would suggest is communicate what's unique to you, what your unique vision is, how you see it, not copying what's already there, because that you know, doesn't really communicate much, you know, that's special. It doesn't communicate what you love about it. It communicates what's there, you know. At that point you might as well just take a photograph or something. But anyway, enough of that shit. Let's get back onto the painting. So as you can see here, we're finally getting a little more in-depth, you know, making the shadows and everything a hell of a lot darker, because now that I've figured out the basic shape of the painting, you know, where all the folds are and everything, now I'm trying to really crank up the darkness of the piece. It's like I want pretty much all of this to be completely in shadow. Now I'm not painting in black, although on the left chef I kind of maybe went a little bit too dark in some parts. There's a few too many details being shown there, you know. But for this guy, what I'm doing is I'm trying to start with the darkest colour possible and then add where the light is going to be. That usually works for me. This is why I like digital painting instead of traditional media, because with traditional you have to start light and work in dark, whereas in real life it's all dark all the time. It's the light that's unnatural. But yeah, so I like to paint with light. I like to add where the light comes in, and it just looks better, doesn't it? You know, it just feels better to slowly build up the tones to make it brighter and brighter and more focused. So that was the basic deal with it. Yeah, you can see it as I run back and forth between the two chefs. I think I kind of nailed it with the dude on the right. The one on the left, I kind of got a little bit too bogged down in producing detail. Although I do like his hat, the one on the left. So I was basically sampling the colours I already had, because I didn't want to spend all day, you know, figuring out you know the different color palettes and everything. And yes, of course, I'm actually sampling colors direct from the reference. Oh, naughty, you should have checked the colors by sight. No, fuck off. I don't have time for that shit, and you know, nobody does. Nobody cares about that. One of the things that I really like about using ArtRage, and especially the paintbrush, I should have mentioned this way earlier, is it's the texture of the brush and everything. You can see the paint on the screen, and when you're using it, as you've seen, it doesn't just lay down a solid colour, it interacts with all the other colours around it, and sometimes the paint that's already underneath is thicker than the colour you're trying to lay down, and so you can be fighting with the paint that's already there, but it brings up these beautiful textures and this really awesome looking these happy accidents, you know, all these other little colours, all these, like, say I'm trying to do this skin colour and everything, and I have this stuff that's sampled, but you have all these reds and, you know, deep browns and everything that just keep coming underneath the paint as you move the brush around, and it's great, you know. I just love stuff like that, and ArtRage is great for doing stuff like that, in my opinion. I'm sure it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who's been following me for any length of time that I'm a big fan of ArtRage. I'm not being sponsored by them, by the way. I wish I was, that'd be nice. Yeah, I know Sai is like the really popular software with a lot of illustrators. I know, like, say Plague Gripes uses Sai quite a lot in his work, and you know, his videos are like a big inspiration, you know, to sort of my style, you know, kind of the way I do stuff and everything. And obviously, like, a load of my friends and everything, it's like my partner as well, she's you know, really into Sai. Sai seems to be the flavour of choice, but for me, I just love ArtRage. I know things like Coral Painter. You know, I mean, I've not actually heard of it for a while now, but you know, back in the day, Coral Painter was like the digital painting app, you know, for traditional media. And I know Photoshop has amazing, you know, filters, brushes and all that, and we will actually be going into Photoshop in a little bit for the final post-production stage. But when it comes to pushing paint around on a canvas, I just love ArtRage. The canvas positioner tool, you know, that big circle on the right, that was, I think, in all honesty, that was the original selling point for me. The fact that I could just rotate the canvas any way I want. Now I know there's plenty of other tools that do that at this, you know, stage in the game, but at the time that was kind of a new thing for me. Every single one of my comics, the graphic novel I'm working on, Heirs to the Throne, they are penciled in ArtRage, because I love being able to, you know, zoom in and out and rotate all in with one tool. I love being able, I just love the texture of the pencil brush and everything. And as you've seen with this video, the way it moves paint around the screen is great. Now the watercolor stuff for ArtRage, not something I've got much experience with. Digital watercolor it's tricky to do. It's a completely different system from, say, oil painting, which is what I'm working with. There is a piece of software that I use called Rebelle. I've yet to record footage for that software, mainly because it's still very early days. I'm trying to get my head around, you know, what the software can do. But if you want to do a Google search for Rebelle and everything, the trailer alone was great. I mean, that is software where the paint has, you can basically decide the direction of gravity. Gravity can affect your paint, as in it can streak, it can run together in certain directions and everything. You can blow on the paper to cause droplets to move around and everything. It's very impressive stuff, and it's fairly affordable too. That's another thing with ArtRage, just to get back onto ArtRage for a bit. ArtRage is so reasonably priced. To be fair, I've never actually paid for it full price. I bought at least 2 different versions down the years, and both of them were on Steam. So my advice would be, if you are on a tight budget and you cannot afford the full priced version, then I would suggest waiting for it to go on sale, as opposed to, you know, piracy and everything, even if it were for training purposes. Yeah. But if you can afford it, definitely pay the full price. I would have cheerfully paid the full price if I could have afforded it at the time. But yeah, all my art software is legit. That's one of the few things I've kind of made a rule for myself. It's like, I don't pirate art software. I don't pirate tools which I make money off, you know, which are business tools, you know. But yeah, ArtRage, if only for the paint, you know, the acrylic paint tool and everything, I think it's worth the price just for that. But it's got plenty of other applications that I barely use, in all honesty. But yeah, what we're doing at the moment now is I'm trying to clean up the painting as best I can. All of this is on one layer, by the way. I'm not using multiple layers or anything. Okay, I'm a liar. The pencils are on a layer above this, but all of this paint, all of these different colours, one solid layer. So, as you can see, we've got the original base coat, which I'm trying to paint out. I'm trying to paint around everything. a little bit too precious, to be honest. You know, I could have stood to, you know, I really should have done the background first and then added more of the detail, but the overall colour changed a little as the piece was being made, so that's my excuse for that. Again, as you can see here, the colour in the background, all the different brush strokes, they are not exactly taking the colour that I want them to. They kind of have a mind of their own. Sometimes that's really good. Sometimes when you're trying to fill huge areas, that can be a problem. So I basically figured that out later on. I was so proud of this eye design. If you think back to, or skip back to way earlier in the video, it was kind of super sped up, but I actually drew half of this eye on a separate layer in Procreate, and I then flipped it and, you know, positioned it, because I just love that, you know, that top arch, the bulge. It's got this, it's just so creepy. I mean, eyes are kind of creepy at the best of times, you know, but the art department for Little Nightmares, the people who came up with that design and everything, brilliant job. Because I wanted there only to be really two major light sources, one that represented the threat and the other to represent Six. I wanted to try and highlight the you know, the contrast, you know, that the cold murky blue for, you know, the threat of the Maw. That's the name of the location where the game takes place. Again, I'm not going to go into story too much. And the other light was Six's match, basically, either a match or a lighter or something. Again, you see here I'm having trouble trying to get a solid line of colour, because the paint under the previous colour underneath keeps being pushed instead of covered. So I tried tapping down really quickly, you know, to add a load of blotches and try and fill in that way. It's one trick that I use sometimes if the acrylic brush is you know, not playing nice. This was a bit tricky. When you're trying to paint an object behind light, so this eyeball is giving off a light. It's giving off a very strong beam of light, but there's an object, but I have to render the eye behind the light. So what I usually do is, like I did with the chefs and everything, I start by working on the darkest. I get the shape figured out, I get the solid shape figured out, I then make sure I have all the shadows done, make it as dark as possible, and then slowly, bit by bit, I work in the light. I figure out where the brightest areas are going to be, and then I slowly start making them brighter, you know, colour by colour. I mean, I could just like go straight in and like add a load of white straight on. It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work, because if you start with white and then you try and tone it down with darker colours, the further out you go, it just doesn't feel right. It's, as I said earlier, I much prefer starting dark and making it lighter with, you know, each brush stroke and everything. So that digital painting, I love it. And here's the thing, as someone who's a little who has anxiety when it comes to traditional media, I really don't like doing traditional painting and traditional you know, like watercolors, and I barely use a regular pencil anymore. 99% of my work is all digital, because I'm afraid of making a mistake. Now, as you've seen throughout this video and all that, tons of mistakes with my work, tons of mistakes in the design and the layout and maybe the anatomy and this and the other, but as I go through the piece, I'm refining it and I'm changing it and I'm working over it bit by bit. Now, with traditional media, yes, you can do that to a degree, but the digital nature of what I do gives me that freedom to experiment, to go completely nuts and to try something really weird out of left field, you know. Here we go. I'm trying to fix the background a little, darken it a bit more using the palette knife, I believe, yeah, to you know, spread the paint around. And then the thing is, you spread it too much, and the paint underneath starts to come off. I know, right? It's awesome. So here I just started splurging with the you know, basically with a tube of paints. I just love the texture because this is mainly for texture now. Very little of this shows up in the final piece, but another good thing about Art Rage is, yeah, I know I've just switched to points. I do that. I'm a little bit flitty. My brain's all over the place. What I like to do with Art Rage, it's got this really nice texture system where not only does the paint that you put on with the brush have texture, but you also have all these other little tools. Like there's a tool that lets you sprinkle dirt and, you know, little bits of dust and sand and rubble. Now if you look at it just on the layer itself, well, why would you do that? If you put that underneath a painting, or you paint on top of that layer, it keeps the texture, and it gives the image, it makes it feel a lot more like you've worked on a physical canvas. You know, this canvas has scuff marks, and it's got you know, grit in the paint, the sand in the paint and all that stuff, you know. And it's it just makes, it gives the image so much more life than what you would have done if you just drew it all in Photoshop and added a texture overlay. Now, to be fair, in a little bit we will be going into Photoshop and we will be doing some very, very subtle editing, but I want to use as much of the natural media, or the simulation of natural media that Art Rage can provide as possible. Now, as you can see here, I was heading towards the end of the painting phase. I took a look at the overall piece, and the gnomes just kind of stuck out to me. They, because they were part of the first draft of the painting and everything, I'd kind of kept their colour a little too close to the background. They kind of just like blurred into it, and it didn't really work, because all the other characters had that sort of that warm brown feel to them, so I just decided to give them another quick repaint to bring them back into the scene and everything. So the background, the eye and everything kept that blue hue, but everything close to 6 has that warm hue to it. In fact, even the lady in the background and the chefs and everything, they have their warm colours too. You know, it just works that way. And I nearly snapped my chair in two. Awesome. So yeah, not much else to say really about this phase. Like I keep saying, Art Rage is a superb tool, and I do recommend it. In all honesty, I suppose if I put the time into it, this was done over a period of around 2 days or so. I mean, as you can see from that, you know, the timestamps in the corner. If I put the effort into it, I'm sure I could do a piece that fit just in Art Rage. You know, that didn't require further editing in Photoshop and this, that and the other. But for me, the big issue, at least with my paintings, is that the colours end up seeming a little flat overall. Now, all the stuff down here with 6, I'm actually really proud of that. You know, the bottom part, the focus, you know, the main focus of the painting, I'm proud of that. I think that works really, really well. However, as you look up a little towards, like, say, the janitor and everything, it starts to come apart a little, and the colours seem a little too flat. There isn't, it's missing a bit of bite, it's missing a little bit of edge, which I get from Photoshop, basically, because I like to, you know, play around with adjustment layers, for levels, for contrast, slight tweaks to the hue, the saturation, you know, basically refining an image. So yeah, that's how things looked in ArtRage. Oh yes, we had one final round. I think I overdid the chef on the left, so yeah, that was it. I actually changed things around, and this was the first time I was using the brand new monitor. Yeah, this was when we got the monitor installed, so as you can see, we've got a heck of a lot more real estate. You know, things changed up for the better there. This was me trying to get them, the two, I think they're brothers? I don't know. I don't know that much of the lore. There's a lot of, like with Inside and everything, there's a lot of stuff in this game that's kind of left unsaid because there's no dialogue, basically. It's all open to interpretation, but yeah, basically I was trying to match up this guy with his friend on the left, and I don't know. It's always good to look at things with a second eye and everything, but I think I kind of overdid the detail because I didn't want you to be able to see everything perfectly, you know, because I wanted everything to be in a silhouette. I wanted to know where everything was. I just didn't want to be able to see where everything was, if that made sense. But in the final painting, I think we got a decent compromise there. Okay, so about a week or two later, sorry for the delay and the tweak in sound quality and everything. It's been an interesting week or two. So since the last chunk of recording, got married, that was awesome, and just been trying to get this video finished and out the door as soon as. One thing I'm gonna say about the ArtRage thing, going back over my notes and everything, I recently tried checking it out on Steam again to give you guys a general price, and yeah, ArtRage actually isn't on Steam anymore. I'm not sure the exact details, but for whatever reason they were unable to get their upgrade offer through Steam for whatever reason, so the company, the producers of ArtRage, decided to remove it from Steam altogether. Now, if, like me, you've already bought your stuff, then it stays on Steam forever. That's actually pretty awesome. But if you guys want your own copy of ArtRage, you've enjoyed what you've seen and you want to play around with it yourself, you're talking around $80 for the full price, and you can get that from artrage.com. Worth it, you know. It honestly is absolutely worth it. What else? I think that's pretty much that in terms of corrections for what's gone on in the video so far. Yeah, so we're in the final phase of things. At the moment, this was like with the new monitor, everything was a lot sharper, and again, this chef on the left gave me so many problems. I don't know what it was. You know, maybe I just got too stuck in a rut with the detailing and everything. I kind of should have taken more of a step back and thought, no, we need more of an impression rather than an actual reproduction. I will say this, it's kind of ironic in retrospect, me waffling on for hours on end about how you really shouldn't, you know, copy verbatim. You should try and get the spirit, the essence of something, and then I end up doing a pretty much identical reproduction of the lady, you know, right in the middle of the painting, and that part of the painting, you know, the lady with the mask, is my personal least favourite because it just doesn't look finished. You know, in the final piece, it just did not look right. And here's the thing with us as artists, we are always going to focus on the one tiny little thing that does not work. Now, most people won't see that. Everyone else is going to see like the cool stuff, hopefully, you know, all the stuff that we got right. But we are always going to get haunted by the shit we get wrong. It's just the way of things. So I think my biggest mistake with this painting was trying to get it rushed out the door, because I had a wedding to prepare for, and I really wanted to get a piece out there from something popular, from something that was relevant at the time. And I don't know if Little Nightmares is quote unquote going away anytime soon, but it does, the attention that it got at launch seems to have died down a bit. You know, people are talking about other stuff now. But I will say this, the fandom on Tumblr and everything, and a couple of other places, I've got a lot of engagement from this painting. This has been one of my more popular pieces on places where I normally don't do so well, like DeviantArt, Tumblr, those particular platforms. This piece did really well, so that was awesome. I'm pretty sure we're in the final stages now of this painting, just going back over everything and trying to darken everything even more. Again, I really should have started way darker and then tried to build it up over time, but initially I wasn't exactly certain what I wanted. You know, when you first lay down a base colour, you're going to think to yourself, oh wow, that's really, really dark. But when you start adding other colours around it, you realise, oh wait, that's not as dark as what I expected. So it's a trial and error kind of thing. As I say, we're in the final stretch, and one thing that I've wanted to do is I really wanted to try and push myself with this video. This is the very first time that I've been using Adobe Premiere. It's been a very long time since I used you know, video editing software, and I've never used PC. I mean, I always used to work on a Mac. That was in my old studio, but with this new one in America and everything, it's a new desktop PC. It's we were gifted the whole CS6 suite, so it's been a bit of a learning curve trying to figure out how everything works. You know, spending every spare moment on YouTube looking up tutorials and everything, trying to figure out how things work, and it's been a process of trial and error. So this video is not going to be the best I've ever done. I know that it's a long one, but I honestly wanted to try and give people value for their time with this one. That's why I wanted to really go in depth with a couple of topics that have been on my mind for a while. You know, the whole tracing thing, you know, reference, you know, artists basically needing to give themselves a little more credit, and you know, trying to share as much as possible about how I do things, because one of the things that's always bugged me, I don't see it so much anymore, but you know, a few years back, you know, back when I was actually studying to be an artist, you know, or to be an illustrator or designer, whatever, was people who clung on to their secrets. You know, people who refused to explain how they worked, what their process was, because they were terrified. Oh, excuse me, people were terrified. Oh, if people know how I work, then they'll just be able to, you know, copy my style, and then I'll be out of a job. Honey, if the only way you're able to get work is because of a particular shortcut in Photoshop or a particular way of holding a brush, then you ain't much of an artist, okay? The best part of this day and age that we live in is that information is free. We can learn how to do anything online. We have access to any kind of information we want. If we want to figure out how to do something, it is right there, with 1,000 different tutorial videos and with 1,000 different accents. You know, it's great. The thing is, the real trick is actually applying that information. You know, taking the time to sit down, really pay attention to what's going on the screen, and to do it. And I think that's the real thing that sets you out in anything, really, is taking the time to learn how to do it. Again, yeah, I look at the middle, and the woman, she drives me nuts. That is the weakest part of the piece, and I really should have done more with that, but you know, hindsight's 2020. My personal recommendation to anyone watching this is, unless you really have a serious time frame issue, if you are desperately trying to get a piece done within 2 days or something, don't rush it like I did. Don't try and rush it out the door. Finish it, quote unquote, and then give it a break. Leave it for a day or two. Do something else. You know, always have a couple of pieces on at the same time. Like I say, I've got a graphic novel I'm working on at the moment. Come back to it, and then with fresh eyes you will see all the parts that stick out, all the parts that just do not work. Oh, and at this point, in case you're wondering why I'm running around with a brush, you probably won't be able to see it on the video, but I'm using the dirt tool. This is I think it's actually called the glitter brush, but I'm laying down bits of dirt. I'm laying down you know, rough texture, which is going to give the painting a little bit of added edge. It feels like it's being painted on a rough canvas. You know, it's got this beautiful flavour to it. And that's pretty much the last part of Art Rage. Oh yeah, on an extra layer I added yet more paint, you know, more tubes of paint. And I flattened most of them out with a palette tool, but I left little bits and pieces to, again, for texture, to make it feel like this was done on not so much canvas, but say on like a piece of wood or a board or something, just to give it a little bit of life. The worst thing with digital art is to have something that's flat and lifeless, you know, in my opinion. So I'm pretty sure that was the last piece of Art Rage, and from there we export it as a layered Photoshop file, or you could just do it as a flattened one, and we open it up in Photoshop. So here is the final stage of things. Now, for the most part, we don't really need all those other layers, but it's always nice to have the option. What I started doing was adding noise layers and adjustment layers. This is to give everything a little more texture. Now, a heavy noise layer just by itself kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. You always want your noise layer to have an overlay setting to be on 50% grey, and you want it to have, I'd say, you know, like a 10-12% opacity. at the end of the day, there is no exact science with stuff like this. As you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm playing around with lighting. I want to try and figure out the best way to highlight the things that matter. So here I was using different adjustment layers and masking them out to highlight the key parts of the painting, the two main points of focus, which were the eye and 6 at the bottom. This is the part of the process that I always have the most fun with, because you're able to just experiment and play around without any fear of ruining the painting you've already done. All the hard work, that's been taken care of. Now you're able to just experiment and figure out what works and what doesn't. The best part, that's the best thing with adjustment layers, in my opinion. Now, for me, I prefer Photoshop. I'm actually not too sure what other programs you could use which would do this, you know, with like adjustment layers and you know, like masking and gradients. You know, I'm sure there's other stuff out there, but for me, Photoshop is the best one. This particular one was CS6. As I think I mentioned earlier, I was given the full CS6 suite as a gift, which was ridiculously awesome. So yeah. The best part about this stage is that you're able to bring everything together. Now, as I said earlier, all of the characters have that warm feel to them. They were all painted in warm colours on a cold background, so they all kind of stick out. Now I'm able to sort of reverse engineer that and figure out a way of having the background characters blend more into the background, while having 6 and the little gnomes be the more warm shade, if that makes sense, you know. So as you can see, I put a hue adjustment layer above everything, a nice cool blue, and you know, gradiented out 6. Then I think I'm gonna add a few more layers above that to really make the yellow of the light and her coat really pop. Maybe something like that, but obviously, you know, not as drastic. And one thing I will say that Photoshop is great at, that ArtRage not so much, it's rendering light. Now, yeah, you can paint with light, sure, but for the really soft airbrushing effects, I prefer Photoshop to ArtRage for that. So, you know, your mileage may vary, you know, you may use different software, but at the end of the day, it's always good to have a variety of different software and different tools, you know, so you can experiment and see what works well together and what doesn't. So yeah, this is the last hurrah, adding a little bit more of a yellow pop to the light and everything, obviously masking all that out. And I'm pretty sure this is gonna be it. So all in all, I'm fairly pleased with how this turned out. Yeah, it could have gone a little bit better in certain parts, but to say it's the first solid painting, the real first effort that I've made with the new studio and the new setup and everything, I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. Although yeah, the lady's face, ugh, did not work out so well. Well, hey, you live and you learn. All in all, I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm really glad that it's got some attention, and I'm looking forward to the next painting, taking this and beating the living crap out of it. Seriously though, I really do love how this turned out. Thank you all for watching, and take care of yourselves. Ta-ra!